everybody, I hope you can hear me well. If you can please confirm that you can hear my voice well, so then we will start. Great stuff. So if you have any problem, please write in the chat. I will try to catch up with your questions. This is an experiment. I never did a class before via YouTube, so we'll see how it goes. There's some delay, I guess around 5-second delay from what I say to when you hear it, so take in consideration this slight lag, please. So in this class we're going to talk about motion graphics. The plan is giving an introduction about graphics, graphic design, 2D animations, 3D animation, and editing. So it's the whole process from start to delivery, and one of the look that we want to explore, the goal of the class is to make you able to realize animation like this one that I'm going to play now. It's very simple 3D objects. It can be also realized in 2D. It's or in 2.5D as they call it now. Okay, as you can see, there are very simple geometries and there is some animation, mainly camera movement, and there's some text. This was part of this infographic, motion graphics video for Hive managed hosting. The tools that we're gonna use, and I suggest you to download or to open an account with, are all free software, so there's no need to buy anything. And we will start with the 2D design. It's not animation, it's just simple 2D design software, which I'm gonna use and show. It's called Gravit designer.io. There are both free and premium plans. We honestly don't need the work offline, because if you can hear me, probably you are online. There are some interesting export options in the paid one, but we're not gonna use them anyway. Version history, we can do it without. It's not a lot of money, but honestly for what we need, the free one, it's okay. Also, we don't need CMYK color space, which is used usually for printing. And we're not gonna export PDF. We're gonna use other file format. We also are not gonna use the cloud. We don't need unlimited cloud storage. We can save the files locally and the problem is solved. So this app, it's actually very powerful. It's somehow similar to Adobe Illustrator or the old freehand. There are other options you can use, but I found this very handy because it can be used in any browser. So on tablet, Windows, Mac, doesn't matter. It always looks the same because it's completely online, and you can save some of your files online, so you can work on multiple computers and platforms without losing any file. They're always in the cloud. So what I'm gonna show you is the interface. So once you create your own account, well, first of all, you can get, actually, this is a new thing, I would say, unfortunately, but it's very good that they are doing something like this. They give you now 3 months, I think, so yeah, 90 days completely free, the pro version. So if you want to try the pro version, you can get it for free. If you're a teacher or educators, of course, you can get it for free too. After that, apparently there is also a discount of 20%, so it may be a good deal and a good alternative to the usual software. You can also download a desktop version. It's basically a web page that will show directly the web page of Gravit Designer. So it's not that you cannot use it without downloading the software. So once you create your account, here's the interface of the software. Very, very simple, clean. Of course, there is a lot of push to buy the final version, but to buy the professional version, but we can do without. It's a very intuitive screen. This is your whiteboard. It's where you design stuff. Then you have the usual menus, nothing special here. What I would like to show you, it's actually the cloud. So you can open a local file or save a local file, but you can also open from the cloud, and the cloud will show a number of projects. You have folders, so I have some of my personal stuff, and then there are files that I use for work. And from here, of course, you can download them locally, and then you can actually upload here from local, so you can exchange file quite easily. So that's the cloud part of the software. As any other software, you have to remember to save, because it's just a web page and there's no autosave. You will see here there is the asterisk here, the star next to the name. That means that you need to save. If I close this one, it will ask me to save. Let's say don't save. This is basically that screen when you start. There are a number of templates. Oh, Australia, Egypt, that's nice. That's cool. We are based in the UK, and I really would like to know where all the other people are from. But that's cool that we are kind of international, very global kind of class. Going back, there are a number of templates, as you can find in other software like Canva, for example. You can start with this, but the final goal for this software is not to create just social media poster or a cover. The reason why I'm going to use this software is to create some shapes that then can be converted in animation. So I want to create objects and characters hopefully, that will be then transferred to other software. So I tested a few of the solutions available, the free solutions, and this one is the one that works better from the design part to the export part, which is the it's paramount, that works well to go smoothly from one software to another. Again, you can open from the cloud or start from scratch. New design, decide what are you gonna do. Well, we don't need too much, as long as you have enough space, you can decide to have like this kind of board. It's big enough. my suggestion is try to work as much as possible with 100% of zoom, so you see exactly the size of what you're doing, pixel per pixel. So 1 pixel here, it's 1 pixel in the file. While if you change the zoom, you don't know really the size of what you're doing. Of course, you need to zoom in while you're designing, but then to check your work, you want to go to 100%. And well, here, if you're not printing, you don't care too much about bleeding, margin, doesn't matter. These are just the page settings, and they really are not important for what we're gonna do, which is only digital and specifically motion graphics. Let's close this, we don't need this. DPI, again, it's, well, we could do a lesson probably about what are DPI. Just ignore them altogether. When working digitally, especially for video, DPI is not a thing. We are going to use pixel. This is our unit, and all other unit really are more for printing. Okay, it's not for video, so just forget for a moment. I will go back to it. It just needs a very long lesson just to it, and this is just an introduction. So you have your whiteboard where you're gonna paste your element. Well, let's just create something quickly so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's create a polygon. Now, this polygon, I want to basically take this polygon, export it as a shape, import it into my animation software, which could be DaVinci Resolve or Blender, depending on what kind of animation I'm gonna do. They're both free. DaVinci has also a studio version which is not free, but we really don't need any of this of those additional feature. So DaVinci Resolve, it's usually a video editing software for grading, for post-production, visual effects, and we're gonna use it together with Blender. Blender also can do video editing, but we want to use the best part of each software. So we're gonna use Gravit Designer for designing 2D objects. Then we're gonna convert them to be used in DaVinci as 2D clip art, for example, or we're gonna convert them to be used in Blender and then add in the 2.5 dimension and the 3 and the third dimension, so going 3D. Again, all this software is free. It's very important to understand that this software is very professional. DaVinci Resolve is one of the industry standard. Blender is becoming one of the industry standard. It's massively complex and deep. So we will only scratch the surface with Blender in this specific course. So the workflow, again, it's creating objects into Gravit. Once you have all your objects, you are gonna export them to Blender or Resolve. If you're working in Blender, once you are in Blender, this is just quickly the interface of Blender. Once you finish your animation in Blender, you export it as basically raw footage, and you go into DaVinci, which is a classic video editing software, and then you will be finalizing the colors, cut, adding soundtrack, and the usual thing that you can do in any video editing software. Oh, hello Joseph from Ireland. That's great. So before we start, we need to understand the difference between an object which is bitmap and an object which is vector. The good thing of Gravit is that there are a lot of libraries of shapes, illustrations, icons, emojis, stickers, frames, blah blah, but you also have a direct connection to Unsplash. Now, probably all of you knows Unsplash, and let's say that we want to use this photo. Okay, you can search, of course, for photo. Is the same photos you find on the website Unsplash. Let's say, okay, let's take this, just import it here and say, okay, I have my photo, and now I'm gonna bring it to 3D. Simply, it doesn't work like this. This object, it's as every photo and most of illustration that are based on analogic sources are called bitmap. Bitmap means that what you see on screen is created pixel by pixel. So this image, it's a basically grid of pixels. Why is important to understand the difference between bitmap and vector? It's because if I now zoom on this person here, Ctrl plus, you will see that I have no detail. See, you can start seeing the pixels actually. So this wouldn't work well with an animation because I cannot zoom in. I can zoom out, of course, but I cannot really zoom in. I cannot deform without losing quality. You can do something with, you can animate some of the photo. For example, if you cut out a person or an object, then you can move it in 2D or 3D as it was cut out, as you had a piece of paper. Imagine a real piece of paper with the photo, and then you take the scissors and you cut around the object, and then you move the shape that you cut out of the paper, like in a stop motion kind of style. Yes, you can do that, but you cannot really deform the shapes. You cannot zoom. You cannot change the dimensions in a easy way. So why it's important using vectors? Let's take an illustration now. Let's go with illustration, and of course they are much simpler, but let's take something that's probably a bit more interesting. Okay, let's take this. Now this illustration is a vector illustration, and in Gravit you can really see that, because when you go with the mouse over the parts, you can see all the different parts of the illustration, and if you drag it, it will show actually all the different parts as outline. If I zoom in, there's no lack of detail ever. You can zoom in as much as you want. It's gonna be always super sharp, and you will never see the pixels. Don't get me wrong, this image on the screen is created with pixels anyway, because everything, it's at the end, it's rendered by your graphic card as a pixel. But the difference is that this image, it's created using functions that goes from a point to another, creating a curve. That means that if I zoom in, the software will recreate the curve to adapt to the new level of zoom, while a photo will stay the same. So in the photo, it will just stretch the dimension of the pixels until you have these blocky elements, while a vector, it's exactly what you expect to be, a vector. So there is a vector defining how this is gonna be seen on screen. I hope this concept it's clear. And to answer to Ganapathy, this specifically streaming is going to be related to Blender, but as this is a comprehensive course, this is just an introduction and overview. We will go into Blender probably in the next lesson. Today we're gonna just have a quick view of what is Blender. So it's very high level, and we will go deeper in the next lesson. We are still at the phase of explaining what is motion graphics, what are the elements, and defining the same vocabulary. So we can keep talking about things like vectors, what is a vector. And in a 3D environment, for example, just to go back to that, to Blender, for example, in a 3D environment, all the objects are defined by vectors. That means that, no problem. That means that this cube, and I'm not gonna really touch anything about Blender right now, but this cube is defined by points, which are called vertices. I'm gonna just show you, and lines. They could be curved with more vertices, but this is a vector. So this is a vector shape, and it could be 2D or 3D, doesn't matter, it's still a vector. I can zoom in as much as I want and it will never lose detail. Then we are gonna discuss what is a polygon instead, which is an evolution from the concept of vector and the resolution of polygons, but that's a completely different subject. So go back to Gravit Designer. We have a number of illustrations, icons. I must say that there is a very, very big choice, and of course you want to use the right category. I don't know why I picked up crime. I was going to culture. And there are like a lot of different style, even the same icon in different style that you can use, and you can modify the style, of course. So let's start. If you don't select anything, you can search here for something like car, and then you will get a number of results, and some of them will be photos, some of them will be illustration. So usually what I do, it's really, I don't go here to explore. Sometimes only if you want to have some kind of inspiration. Otherwise I just type what I need, like cloud, and I will pick up whatever I like as a cloud. As I show you that introduction video, we can go from there. So let's pick up a cloud. Again, the style, it's up to you. I'm not gonna teach creativity here. I'm gonna just teach how to use the tools. So let's start from this, something very, very simple. Now, if you want to scale without losing the proportion, you need to press Shift. So this is our object, it's tiny, I know, let's go 100%, Ctrl 1, and then if you want to scale it, you can do it in different ways, to be fair. This way you are scaling the object with Shift. You can also use this. If you keep ratio, you can just change the size to whatever is the size. If you want to go with precision, for example, if you have two objects, okay, I just now to duplicate I press Ctrl D, or you can drag pressing Alt. So Alt, click and drag will duplicate, or you can Ctrl D will duplicate in place, and then you select and move. Go back. So I was saying, let's say that we have two objects and this one is slightly larger. and you don't know how to make it exactly like the other one, you can just check the size here and then replace the size in the other one, and they will be exactly the same size. You think Blender worth to learn for motion graphics? Yes, Techno, it is absolutely, and it's gonna be the standard for motion graphics very soon. It's already used by many people. The community is big. The help it's very easy to be found. The tools are amazing. So yes, absolutely. There are of course other options. After Effects is the main thing that it comes to mind when talking about motion graphics, but it's not free, and actually it's much heavier on the system. Yeah, Blender is only one. In theory, with Blender you can do video editing, you can do compositing, you can do color grading. At the moment, I believe that Blender is amazing for animation, for rendering, and motion graphics in general. The video editing, I don't know if it's gonna be there for a long time. Right now, it's just a tool if you really don't have anything else. But we're gonna use in this course DaVinci Resolve. So Blender is gonna be just one of the links in the chain. Okay, so this object is black. The common thing that you can use with that you can do with an object like that is changing the fields, which is this black you can see, or the border. Now, all of these things cannot be done with an image like a photo, because even if you crop a photo, let's say that I bring this one here, for example. That's not what I meant. Let me deselect. I bring this photo here. Even if I crop this photo, okay, maybe I cannot crop this photo from here, but what I meant is that I cannot change the color of a photo from here. Yes, with software like Photoshop, you can certainly do it, but then you have to cut, you have to move it around, and then once you are really trying to scale, it's not gonna work, and if you zoom in, it's gonna be pixelated. So no, let's go back to this, which is a different style. You can do very complicated and fine illustrations depending on your skill, but we're gonna use this to make simple motion graphics. Motion graphics, probably you don't really need too many details. It's more about shapes, color, lights, and the animation timing. But it's up to you again. So let's say that we have this cloud. Fields and borders. Borders, it's right now it says that we have border and it's white. It's actually transparent. We want a color field red, and you probably cannot see because it's very tiny. It's one pixel, but let's make it 10 pixel, and we have our border here. The border can be different kind of border. It could be a gradient, it could be a texture, so if you want a pattern on this, but again, we don't need this for motion graphics. We need very simple shapes, and the fields again can be any color you pick. There are, of course, there are a number of swatches if you use the Pro version. Otherwise, you can select the color yourself. You can use your favorite colors if you know the hexadecimal file. In use are all the color in the scene, so it's perfect. Mixer, it's actually all different kind of shades of what you're using already. Okay, let's change the fill to black. It's important you also know that you can have no border, and most of the time you don't need a border because you are gonna work with the shape without any other visual outline. Another thing that it's interesting here, but it may be that we are not going to use it in animation, at least not inside the software, is the transparency, which is exactly what you imagine is going to be. So now we have 2, and then we can work with colors, and you will have this kind of transparency effect. But let's say that this one is not transparent. An important concept of any illustration software is that every object is basically laid on a different layer. Even if you don't see the layer in here, but this object is right now, of course, on top of this one. So what's important to understand is how to move between layer, and here it's kind of easy. You have bring forward, send backward. Done. I love Blender, but I don't want to make it my main app for my work. And if I work with pro people, for the okay, techno. Then I really suggest to go in another direction. Of course, there are other software. This class is going to use Blender though, and I used Cinema 4D for years. It's great, it's expensive, and unless it's your only tool that you use for the job and you work with that tool exclusively, I don't think it's the right choice. So if you're learning motion graphics, doesn't matter what tool you use, and especially if you are learning, it's better to go with the free option, and then you'll decide how things develop for you. But yeah, that's great. Do you work for Maxon by any chance? If you do, I wouldn't mind a copy of Cinema 4D for free. Just let me know. So, layers. It's not just bring forward or send backward. Let's say that we have another one. Let's change color so it's clearly, and the alpha back to 100. Now this one is on top. If I want to put it between these two, I can send it forward. I need this to be completely matte so you can see how they move. So bring forward 1, bring forward 2. Okay, so this is how you move the object from one layer to another. If you want to add effects, you can add effects to it. So if you want to create an illustration, it's not going to be animated. Of course, you can do other stuff, not color adjust, but for example, blur. You can blur your shape, and then you can also add the shadow, for example. Let's remove the blur. And let's add the shadow back. Let's add the strong shadow so it can be seen. And that can be moved, of course. I still have some blur. Okay, now it's gone completely. So, another thing you can do with vectors is they are vector. Of course, you can rotate and you won't lose any kind of resolution, while if you start rotating a photo, you will lose resolution. If you change anything in the photo, you will start losing quality. So if you rotate a photo and save, and then reopen the photo, rotate and save, each time you do this, you're gonna lose resolution. While this one, as it's completely created by a math function, by vectors, is gonna be the same. You can play, change the shape, change the size. Will never, the rotation scale will never lose any resolution. So let's zoom in a little bit, or let's scale this a little bit. Right click will open a menu of a number of things you can do. Of course, we have arrange. You can memorize actually the shortcut to go quicker. Or there are some transformation, align feature. For example, the common thing is selecting two of them and then align them on the bottom. Or for example, you can group them, and now they behave as a single object. Everything you do, it's applied to both of them. And techno, I really believe that you may work with Blender. And in my career, I never found any company that told me you just use this software. Yes, if it's a big corporation, like a big studio, they can tell you you have to learn this software. But if you know the basics, or if you know even deeply a software, it's gonna be much easier to jump from one software to another. So what you learn is not very, what software you learn is not very important if you're learning. A few weeks to move from one software to another, it's completely acceptable anywhere you want to work. But you're welcome, and I'm grateful you're here watching this video and maybe more. That's just my suggestion, really. Just take it with a pinch of salt. On group selection, you can split the object in a group. So for example, if we take this shape that it's already it basically showing 3 different objects, we can split, and now we have different parts. Each of the single part is a vector, so it can be modified as it was a different illustration. In fact, it's a different illustration. So as a rule of thumb, it's always very important to have simple shapes altogether. If you have parts of the shapes that are overlapping to their own geometry, it will be very complex to edit them further. So just keep simple shapes and build with multiple shapes. For example, a shape like this, you can clearly see that there are 3 objects, but each object it's quite simple. Or let's go with something more complex. So now if I move it, you can see that it's the outline and how many shapes are there. But all the shapes are quite simple. This is kind of an icon, really. It's not a very big illustration, but it could be a perfect starting point when doing animation. Again, you can ungroup the selection, and then you will have these. There was one of the shapes, and then you have these. Then you have that. Then you have also white background. In this case, I remove it, and then you can keep split, and then you have 1, 2, 3. Now there is a difference between splitting and ungrouping. When you combine 2 shapes, you have the intersection of the shape that it's basically going to be removed from one another. So this is very useful when you want to create, for example, let's say that we have this sphere and I want quickly to create a half sphere. I will go like this, probably that this is the fastest way I can imagine, and then I join them and it doesn't work. Oops. So what you want to do is selecting the action when you join. So I want to subtract, but the other way. So I will start. Oops. I will select it's not working. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. I need to change color to show you the position of the object. Okay, now clip will basically merge everything that it's inside, while subtract will remove one shape from another. Now which one is going to be removed is defined by the layer position. So the remover, the cutter, that's how is it called often, is going to be on top. Subtract. You can of course do an intersect that will just select what's intersect, or difference that it's what it was doing before. At the same time, you may want to create a shape that it's just one shape altogether. In that case, you have to do a union. Now this is one shape. Going back. This is the group icon. It's all stuff that you can do from here. Go back to a simple shape, or let's bring something more interesting like our cloud. Yeah, let's go with a field cloud. Edit selection. Now with edit selection, which you will go back with the escape key, edit selection lets you edit the points that are the key points of the shape. Of course, you can select and move and it will start doing shapes. But also you can change you can select, for example, what's going on, dismiss. You can select, for example, instead of the point, you can select the curve, and then you can change the type of curve like this. So there are multiple ways of edit. So you can clearly modify any shape, and then escape, you have something completely different. But you can also create a shape from scratch. So if you go here, you have the main tool for creation. Oh, of course, sorry. You have line, rectangle, ellipse, polygons, triangle, stars. They are kind of the standard shapes that when you started designing. But then you have also pen. Pen, it's basically a freehand where you click. It's a freehand tool where you click one point, you create one point, then you have a line. If you keep shift pressed, you have snaps at 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 45 degrees, move, next point, move, next point, and so on. Then you have also snaps, so you know exactly where to finish. Once you created the shape, as this border, let's make it bigger so you can see. So any shape, before I go on, any shape has two elements. One is the content of the shape, and one is the perimeter. The perimeter is defined by the border. The look of the perimeter is defined by the border, but you can have shapes without a border, as I showed you before. So in that case, you will have only the area of the shape visualized. Now, let's say that we want to edit this further, because I can move this point of the shape easily. But what if I want a different kind of shape here? Here it is. I go to the curve and I can easily move to something more organic, I would say. You also can use the handles that can be snapped with shift again. Snapping handles means that there is continuity between the two segments. So just to understand, point, line, it's the segment, point, line, and so on. You can add more points if you select again the pen. The path tool is called pen, the pen tool is called path, and then you go into the line where you want to add a vertex, a point, until you see the plus, then you click done. Also with the same tool you can go where you have an angle, like a strong angle, let's say with the right angle here, and if you click on it, it will remove it. Both with left or right doesn't really change much. Now here you have two different selections. One is the pointer, which is to select the shape. One in the sub-select that will actually select the elements, so like this. So I think it's kind of clear how you're gonna modify these objects. If you click once, it will delete the point. If you click and keep clicking and drag, you will change the object from one kind, like from segment without this handle, to a curved. If you want to go back to just segment, you click once on them, and if they are curved, they will be transformed into segment again. So it takes some practice to do this, but you may work you may be working with shapes already made, for example, and the same rules apply. So you can take this cloud, and then you can go in sub-select and change, sorry, with the path, and change all of the vertex to this. That was too much. And then you have a completely different shape. I'm not saying that you need this shape specifically, but that's kind of some practice that you maybe want to do. And then you can go back and you can, oops, then you go back with sub selection and you bring them back. You can really do the design as you need. Nice. So next thing, it's if you have a tablet, for example, you can use the real freehand, which doesn't let you add points, but it draws a line and then slightly adapted and smooth, adding points. So if you don't have a tablet or a Apple Pen or something, it's going to be very hard to draw something precise. But you may want, for example, to something you can do. I'll show you something, an example where you can use this feature. Let's go with car. Of course, there will be a lot of icons and clip arts you can use, but let's say that you want a specific car, like I want this one. Okay, then I go with my freehand with a lot of patience, and then I will redraw the car, or a face, for example. You can draw a character in the same way. You want to zoom in, you cannot do this from a distance. You need to be very precise, but this is a way. The other way, of course, it's to use the pen, click, move, drag, click, move, drag, and creating our shape. Okay, this is another way you can do. And then if you remove the photo, you will notice that you have this line. Now, this line cannot have a fill in theory, because this is what happens if you fill a line that is not closed. You will fill it trying to create the final line from the first point to the last one. So that's not the way you're supposed to do shapes. In theory, every shape should be closed. That's the general rule. Okay, it's all clear to this point. You have other tools like well, knife, it's used for shapes again, and then you have the usual text. Of course, I have to do this. And you can change the size of the text box, and then changing the size of the text. It's the usual really settings that you can find in any software. There is the alignment, there's the spacing of the word, the spacing of the letters. You can do really a lot. You can pick your own font. You can also import fonts, which is very handy if you have the Pro version. But I must say that the majority of the fonts are there. Plus there are other ways to use text. So in this course I will show you how to use more how to create text in other software too. So we are not going to use text here unless it's part of the design. As part of the design, I mean that I want to create a text that it's going to become a shape. So from here I convert to path. Now the font is not editable anymore, the text, and as you can see, this is just shapes, and then I can split them, and I have all the different parts, and I can play with them, and I can do more. So if I need, for example, to do some kind of animation with that, and I want to import in Blender or DaVinci some spatial editing of the letters, I can do it from here. Now I don't know what I'm gonna do, but let's say that we have this, and then we move this inside, and then we do subtract. No, it's the opposite. Okay, now I select, I do subtract, and now I have, let's bring it in front so you can see. Now you can see that there is basically a hole in my shape, and I can do this in this software easily. You can import logos, you can import your own graphics if you have any vectors. Once you have your shape ready, once you have your own elements ready, and for example I can show you something else that I already did. Say this. I designed all this element for another animation I did, and then I exported this element and I imported them into Blender. So let's see how it goes. I start from a very simple shape, which is this one. I actually don't even need the border, I don't want anything, I want just a single cloud. Before I go into show you this, I know that I show you how different objects are on layers. You have here actually the layers visually, so you can move them like manually if you want. I find it much easier to move them with icons or with a shortcut. But if you give a name to them, cloud green, it's always good to name your components, the parts of your project to know what they are if you open an old project or if you pass your project to someone else. Black cloud. Now it's easy to know what you're gonna select, and let's see, I want the green cloud on the back, it's gonna be back. I want the green cloud inside the black cloud, that's another story. And this is basically gonna create a group. You can create a new layer, multiple pages. It's not really important at this stage, and these are parts that you can explore in a different moment. So once you select your object, you want to make it exportable as SWG. The difference is that SWG compared to PNG is a bitmap format, so you will export just the pixel you see on screen, while SWG, it's the format that lets you import in other software and keep in the vector features settings of the object. So SVG, and then we can do actually we can do it from here. Now I have my, let's see if, well, okay, I'm not gonna use Internet Explorer anyway, sorry guys. Just want to open quickly the image. You see that you have the image as SVG, sorry. Then if I go in another software, I can open it easily and import it, for example, in Blender. But I'm not gonna go in Blender today because it's gonna be a very complex topic. So let's go back to here. So to this point, is everything clear, guys? Do you have any question? Do you have anything that you think, do you want to know, how can I do this? We are still at the stage of designing, drawing 3D stuff, 2D stuff. Things that you can do in DaVinci 2 if you want. You can do it in Blender. Those tools are not the best to draw with precision and with it's very slick and fast working in Gravit. So I would like to know if what you think till this point. Is there anything unclear? Do you want to see some specific feature, something that you can really do this here? I think it's quite self-explanatory once you start going into the software and check what you can really create. And as I said, there's plenty of templates and objects that you can use. Yeah, that you can use from scratch without designing anything really. Sometimes if you are in a rush, you really need to pick some clip art, put them together. As long as the message is conveyed, that's a good result. So this software lets you create your own graphics if you want, or as a very good library of objects you can pick up. So I guess there's a lot of delay in my connection, but let's go on. So I'll wait for you to say, you know, if you want to know something specifically, or I don't know, Mariana, it's all clear for you? I didn't mention, of course, you can import your own photos, your own images, your own logos, plenty of logos to search from. Great. So how does this software link to Blender or to DaVinci? Exporting whatever you do in components. So if you have, let's go back to this that I showed you earlier. So there are effects. There are a few effects, especially in the Pro version. I think there are many effects, but those effects won't export in as a vector. So you can only export shapes and borders. If you have a cloud with a shadow, the shadow won't be exported as a vector. If you want to export as an image, so as a PNG, let's say that you are doing a poster, or you're doing a graphics that is going to be still, or you want to work with animating 2D, completely 2D shapes, then you can export them as a PNG instead of SVG. To be fair, I didn't explore how many effects are there. There are like top shadow in a shadow. There's a more. Yeah, you can do something, but it's all that stuff that you want to do it in your final software, not while you are designing really. It's a distortion. and it's in the Pro. It's only Pro that can do this. So the only reason why we're using this software now, it's because it's very good to do the basics that we need. And sometimes other software are actually more complex doing the basics, even if they are like fully fledged with the number of effects and cool things. But this one, it's actually best used exporting shapes. So again, if you have this shape and you have a drop shadow here, remove the shadow a bit, and I export this as a vector, I will only have my shape or my border, because the border is a vector again and the shape is a vector, while this blur, it's a bitmap effect. It's created on the fly, but it's not part of the SVG standard vector file format. Plus, it won't convert any good in 3D, because in 3D the shadow is given by a source of light. It's not a fake image added on the back of the shape. So yeah, you can play a bit with that. Again, if you want to create some graphics, they're okay. And well, a preset, so like a style, that's the other part of the question. I don't know. What I know for sure is that they are the most used here. And let me see. No, I will just create the effect like this. I'm really not sure if you can create your own presets here, because it's a very simple software. At the end of the day, it has all the tools that you need for doing some stuff, but it's not that heavy. It would be massive. What you can do, it's not probably the same. It's creating a symbol. So let's go with a simple object. Okay, you have this, and then you create your own drop shadow. Then you create a symbol, which then can be brought back here. And now I assume that if I create another object, can I not blur? No, it doesn't let me import any. This is just your own library of objects with all the effects, but no, it doesn't let me create any preset. So we can go now to have a preview of what's gonna happen tomorrow. Just a preview, and then we'll stop it here for today. I will suggest to download Gravit, download DaVinci if you don't have it already, and download Blender. Download the latest version. It works with any computer. Some computer may be a bit slower, but it's a very lightweight software, so it will adapt to the computer hardware quite well. Plus, we're not gonna do anything very heavy. With Blender, you can do anything from a cube or like a square to movie, special effects, and anything that you can probably see on my channel and everywhere. They do actually, they have a nice community, and they do like full length movie animation, of course, and they are quite amazing. I'm actually doing a also a list of Blender channels on YouTube that do tutorials, so there will be plenty of material to study if you want, and really there's no limit to the things you can do with Blender. Tomorrow we are going to see what is this interface like. In this version has been cleaned up a lot. Now it's a very serious software. Up to a couple of years ago was complicated, to use an euphemism, compared to other commercial software. Right now I would say that it's a very mature piece of software. If you install it and you want to play around, feel free to it. It may be very frustrating. If you are panicking with the layout, with the interface, you can select an interface that you would like to change on the fly. Things you want to learn, it's defaults. This is important. Load factory settings and everything will come back to normality. Okay, so in the worst case, just go back to the factory settings and we can start from there. Tomorrow we will start really from the real basic, the interface. It's complex. You need to understand many parts, because while Gravit is meant to create basic shapes in 2D, here you can do basic shapes in 3D. So there are new concepts to understand, but also in the 2D animations, most of the concepts are the same. So it's important to understand the interface fully. It's very flexible and it's a lot of fun to use, to be fair, and you must know this by now. I really love it. So yeah, we are gonna basically dig into this 3D world. We're gonna possibly use it in 2D to start with. A 3D space is basically 2D with another dimension. I know it sounds like that's exactly what it is, but what I mean is that any 2D software or 3D software, it's exactly the same. At the end of the day, you see a 2D representation, but there's much more. Exactly like the layer, where every object is one on the back of the other. In 3D, you have the depth also of the shapes. So while the points and lines are exactly like the other software in 2D, then when you turn, you have also another dimension. So the lines and the shape have depth. The points can be linked to 2 points or more than 2 points, depending if you have like well, I won't go there. It's getting too complicated already and it may become overwhelming. Plus it takes some time to get used to how to navigate. While Gravit, it's standard, you can move with let's create an object. You can move in different ways, like if you click the central middle mouse button and you move around, and then you select in the usual way with one click, or with a rectangle, right click, it's menu. And it's kind of the same in 3D. You have menu, you have one click, you select, you can click like this, but then if I click with the middle mouse button, it will start rotating, and this is not what you need when you do 3D. That's exactly what you don't need when you do 3D. So one quick thing you can do if you want really to start exploring this interface on your own, good luck. Without the tutorial, good luck, because it's not easy. You press shift and then middle mouse button and you move. What are you moving? It's actually a camera. As I said earlier, you have a camera which you can see here, but you can also see the camera in the show. So I'm watching at this camera, which is this camera here, is the camera in the scene from another camera. So it may be confusing sometimes. And if I go and I want to see what this camera is viewing, I click here and I have what the camera is viewing. Now we need to learn what's going on, because if I start rotating, the camera is out now, and I'll show you how to do it later. But yeah, shift, drag with middle mouse button, while without is just rotating, and then the scroll is to zoom, but you can also press Ctrl and move the mouse up and down, and you zoom anyway. Now, is it a zoom or is it a dolly movement? We're gonna see all of these things tomorrow, especially when you are in 2D. Doesn't really matter, because in 2D we have an orthographic view, while in 3D we have a perspective view, which are the two main visualization of a 3D environment. Okay, I think I should probably end this lesson here, and tomorrow we are gonna move to a 3D space, a 3D software. We're just going to learn the basics, so the user interface, and some quick tip, for example, like importing objects or importing shapes from Gravit. So if you have any other question, guys, I'll thank you a lot for being with me, and hope to see you tomorrow. It's going to be, the live is going to be, well, I think the same time at around 3. I'd say 3. Let's try to do it at 3 instead of 15 past. So it's 3 London time, which I have no idea where it's going to be around the world. I believe that I'm gonna leave the stream available for anyone to watch it again. And I really hope that everybody watching this video is going to be able to create something and use it, even if it's not for work, for someone, that will be something exciting for fun. It's a new skill. I think that it's always good learning new stuff. We can have in the future probably some more Photoshop kind of class. I will go at the end of this lesson for motion graphics. I will also do a few lessons of video editing, just to have the whole course from everybody that doesn't know anything about video editing too. So we're gonna see more 2D designing, we're gonna see 3D, we're gonna see video editing, and we're gonna see rendering of whatever it's created in a 3D or in the video editing software. Thank you so much, and I speak to you soon. Bye bye.